Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UHSN Valkyrie, staring at the endless stars through the massive viewport. 3 years had passed since humans first made contact with alien life. 3 years since they learned they were not alone in this vast universe. 3 years since they discovered something that shocked every human who heard it. The galaxy was soft. Every alien species they met came from worlds that humans would call paradise. Light gravity that made movement easy. Stable weather that never brought disasters. Plants that were gentle and harmless. Animals that posed no real threat. These aliens had evolved in safety and comfort and peace. Earth was different. Earth was a nightmare by their standards. The Galactic Council had given Earth a classification that made Jake both proud and sad. Class 12 Deathworld, a planet where the gravity crushed, where storms could level cities, where the smallest creatures carried venom that could kill, where the weather itself was an enemy. Humans had evolved to survive all of that. It made them stronger, faster, more resilient than any other known species. It also made them different in another way. They knew how to fight. They understood violence. They had learned over millions of years that sometimes you had to stand up and protect what you loved. The aliens did not understand this. They had committees and meetings and protocols for everything. They debated and discussed and delayed. Jake had watched it happen a dozen times already. Some small conflict would arise, and the council would talk for months while people suffered. Lieutenant Amy Carter broke the silence. She was young, barely 25, but already one of the best communications officers in the fleet. Her fingers moved across her control panel and her face went pale. "Commander, we have a distress signal. It is from the Xyloth system. The signal is breaking up, but I can clean it up." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Xyloth. He knew them well. They were crystalline beings who lived on a beautiful world of singing stones and glowing gardens. They communicated through sound, through music. Their entire culture was built on harmony and peace. They had been some of the first aliens to welcome humanity without fear. "Put it through," Jake said quietly. Static filled the air. Then a voice came through, speaking the common galactic language. But the voice was wrong. It was filled with terror and pain. It was the sound of someone who had lost all hope. "This is High Harmonist Velthor of Xyloth Prime. We are under attack. The Krail Dominion has come. Our defense systems failed. They are landing on our world. They are taking our people. They are dragging families from their homes. They are breaking us apart, loading us into their ships like cargo." The voice broke, the sound like crystal shattering. "Please, if anyone can hear this. We have children here. We have elders who cannot run. They are not soldiers. They are farmers and artists and teachers. The Krail are taking them all. Please help us, please. We are begging." The message ended with a sound that Jake would never forget. It was the sound of someone screaming as they were torn away from everything they loved. The bridge was completely silent. Jake looked at his crew. Amy had tears running down her face. Lieutenant Danny Price at the weapons station had his hands clenched into fists. Engineer Katie Wells was staring at the floor, her jaw tight. Medical officer Dr. Ryan Hughes looked like he might be sick. Jake knew what they were all thinking because he was thinking the same thing. The Krail. Pirates and slavers who lived beyond council space. They raided peaceful worlds, took whoever they wanted and sold them to the highest bidder. The council had been trying to stop them for centuries. Trying and failing because the council did not understand how to fight. But humans understood. "Amy, open a channel to all human ships in range. Emergency protocol. Katie, I want maximum power to the engines. Danny, start weapons checks on everything we have. Ryan, prepare medical bay for mass casualties." Danny spoke up, his voice careful. "Commander, the council has strict rules about military action. We need permission from the High Assembly. That process takes time. Days, maybe weeks." Jake turned to look at his tactical officer. Danny was a good man, always by the book, always careful. But right now the book did not matter. The Xyloth do not have days. They do not have weeks. They probably do not have hours. Set course for Xyloth Prime, best possible speed. And someone get me Admiral Patricia Stone on the line. Within minutes, the fleet communication system came alive. 12 human warships scattered across 3 sectors had all heard the distress call. 12 captains were all coming to the same decision. The screen showed Admiral Patricia Stone. She was 50 years old, with gray streaking through her dark hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind her, Jake could see the bridge of the UHSN Thunderchild, the biggest and most powerful ship in the human fleet. "I heard the message, Commander Morrison. Every human ship in range heard it. The Council will want to meet. They will want to discuss. They will want to form a committee and write a report and debate the proper response. And while they talk, the Xyloth will be sold into slavery. She leaned forward, her voice dropping low and dangerous. But we are not the Council. We come from Earth. We come from a world that taught us how to fight. We come from a world that taught us that sometimes talking is not enough. We are Deathworlders. And we do not abandon our friends. The Admiral straightened. Fleet Order Alpha. All human vessels proceed immediately to Xyloth Prime. Load every weapon. Charge every system. Prepare for combat. We will not ask permission. We will not wait for approval. We answer the call. Jake felt something fierce and hot rise in his chest. Acknowledged, Admiral. The Valkyrie is on the way. The ship shuddered as the engines roared to life. The Valkyrie began to accelerate, pushing harder and faster than safety regulations allowed. Around them, other human ships did the same. They were burning their engines hot, risking damage, risking everything. Jake walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars blurring past. Somewhere out there, the Xyloth were suffering. Families were being torn apart. Children were crying for parents who could not save them. And the galaxy's so-called peacekeepers were sitting in their comfortable chambers, talking about protocols. But humanity was different. Humanity had learned long ago that peace was not the absence of violence. Peace was what you built by standing up to those who preyed on the innocent. Peace was what you protected with strength and courage. The Krail Dominion had made a terrible mistake. They had attacked humanity's friends. They had hurt people that humans cared about. And now they were going to learn a lesson that the soft species of the galaxy had never been able to teach them. They were going to learn what it meant to face a species from a death world. They were going to learn what happened when you made humans angry. They were going to learn that humans would cross the stars, break every rule, risk everything, to save those they called friends. Amy's voice broke through his thoughts. Commander, we are receiving messages from other human ships. 17 more vessels have changed course. They are coming from everywhere. Mining ships, transport ships, even some civilian vessels. Everyone who heard the call is coming. Jake smiled grimly. That was humanity in a nutshell. When someone cried for help, you did not check if you had permission first. You did not worry about the rules. You just went. How long until we reach Xyloth Prime? He asked. Katie's voice came over the intercom from engineering. 8 hours at current speed, Commander. But I can push the engines harder if you need it. Do it. Every minute counts. The ship vibrated as Katie coaxed even more power from the engines. Jake knew she was risking a burnout. He knew they might damage systems they would need in the coming fight. But none of that mattered. What mattered was getting there in time. Jake looked at his crew one more time. They were ready. They were angry. They were human. And they were about to show the galaxy what that meant. The journey to Xyloth Prime took 8 hours. 8 long hours where every human ship pushed their engines to the breaking point. 8 hours where more and more vessels joined the fleet. What started as 12 warships grew to 47. Ships came from everywhere. Military vessels on patrol changed course. Merchant ships carrying cargo dumped their loads and armed themselves. Even mining ships joined, their industrial cutting lasers repurposed as weapons. Commander Jake Morrison watched his tactical display as the fleet grew. Each new marker that appeared represented another human who had heard the call. Another person who decided that some things were more important than rules and regulations. The mining ship Frontier's Edge was particularly interesting. Captain Sam Roberts was 70 years old and had been mining asteroids for 40 years. But when he heard the Xyloth distress call, he had converted his ship into a makeshift warship. Jake could see on the scanners that Roberts had mounted his mining lasers on rotating platforms. It was crude, but it would work. Commander, Amy said, her voice tense, we have an incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. It is Counselor Threndall. Jake had been expecting this. He took a deep breath and nodded. Put him on screen. The view screen showed a Valorian. Threndall was one of the oldest species in the Council, evolved from flying creatures on a low-gravity world. He had 6 eyes that could look in different directions at once, and right now all 6 were focused on Jake, with what looked like distress. Commander Morrison, the Council has been informed that the human fleet is moving toward Xyloth Prime. You must turn back immediately. Military operations require authorization from the High Assembly. The proper procedures must be followed. This is not optional. Jake kept his voice calm and professional even though anger was burning in his chest. Counselor Threndall, with all due respect, the Xyloth are being loaded onto slave ships right now. How long will your authorization process take? Threndall's eyes blinked in sequence. Something Jake had learned meant the alien was uncomfortable. An emergency session has been called. All council members are being contacted. We will have a vote within 72 hours. 72 hours, Jake repeated slowly. Counselor, in 72 hours, those people will be scattered across 100 different slave markets. Their children will be sold. Their families will be broken forever. We will arrive at Xyloth Prime in 6 hours. We are not turning back. Threndall's feathers ruffled in agitation. Commander, you must understand. The Council cannot approve unauthorized military action. There will be serious consequences. Economic sanctions, trade restrictions. Humanity could be expelled from the Council entirely. Jake leaned forward, his eyes hard. Then expel us, Counselor. But understand something. Where we come from, you do not abandon friends because of paperwork. You do not let innocents die while you wait for proper authorization. We are Deathworlders. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We survived because we learned to fight. And right now the Xyloth needs someone who knows how to fight. Before Threndall could respond, another voice cut into the channel. Admiral Patricia Stone appeared in a split screen, her face like carved stone. Counselor Threndall, this is Admiral Patricia Stone. You want to expel humanity from the Council? Go ahead, do it. But you will do it after we save our friends. Morrison, cut the channel. We have work to do. The screen went dark. Jake turned to look at his crew. They were all staring at him with a mixture of pride and concern. Katie spoke quietly. We just told the Galactic Council to go to hell. That is not going to end well for us. No, Jake agreed. But it is the right thing to do. Danny, what is our tactical situation? Lieutenant Danny Price pulled up a holographic display showing the Xyloth system. Based on standard Krail operations, we estimate 20 to 30 heavy cruisers in the system. They will have defensive positions around the planet. Their carrier ships will be loading captives. Standard doctrine is to keep the carriers protected in the center while cruisers form a perimeter. Amy looked at the numbers. 47 ships against 30. We have superior numbers. We have more than numbers, Jake said quietly. We have motivation. The Krail are there to steal and profit. We are there to save our friends. That makes all the difference. Danny, work with the other ships. I want a battle plan that hits them hard and fast. Priority targets are the carrier ships. We cut off their escape routes. Not a single Xyloth leaves that system in chains. Danny nodded and began coordinating with the other ships. Jake watched the tactical display as the plan came together. The human fleet would drop out of hyperspace at multiple points around the system. They would converge on the carriers simultaneously, using speed and aggression to overwhelm the Krail defenses. It was not a Council-approved battle plan. The Council preferred careful approaches, measured responses, minimal casualties on both sides. But the human plan was different. It was designed to end the fight quickly and decisively. It was designed to terrify the enemy into surrender. Ryan Hughes appeared on the bridge. The doctor looked tired already and the battle had not even started. Medical bay is ready, Commander. We have supplies for thousands of wounded. I have contacted every human ship with medical facilities. We are coordinating treatment protocols. Good work, Doctor. The Xyloth are crystalline beings. Do we know how to treat their injuries? Ryan nodded. I have been studying their physiology. Breaks in their crystal structure can be repaired with harmonic resonance therapy. I have the equipment ready, but Commander, if they have been aboard Krail ships for days, the psychological trauma will be severe. These are a peaceful people. They have never experienced violence like this. Jake felt his jaw tighten. The Xyloth had welcomed humanity with open arms. They had shared their music, their art, their culture. They had asked for nothing in return except friendship. And now they were suffering because the galaxy had no one strong enough to protect them. Until now. 6 hours to contact, Amy announced. All ships report ready for combat. Commander, we are receiving a message from Captain Roberts on the frontier's edge. He says, and I quote, I have been mining rocks for 40 years. Time to mine some Krail ships instead. Despite the tension, Jake felt a smile tug at his lips. That was Sam Roberts, 70 years old and still ready to fight. That was humanity in a nutshell. From the youngest ensign to the oldest veteran, they all understood the same truth. You protected your friends always, no matter the cost. Jake stood at the viewport watching the stars blur past as the Valkyrie raced toward Xyloth Prime. Behind him, his crew worked with focused intensity. There was no music playing, no casual conversation. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone knew they were about to start something that could change everything. The Galactic Council had rules. They had procedures. They had protocols that had been developed over thousands of years. Those rules existed to prevent violence, to promote peace, to protect civilized society. But humanity had learned something that the Council had forgotten. Sometimes rules were not enough. Sometimes to protect the innocent, you had to be willing to break those rules. You had to be willing to get your hands dirty. You had to be willing to fight. The Council species came from gentle worlds. They did not understand violence because they had never needed to. But humans came from Earth, beautiful, terrible Earth. A world that had forged them in fire and blood and struggle. A world that had taught them that survival meant being strong enough to protect what you loved. 5 hours to contact, Amy said quietly. Jake nodded. 5 hours until they showed the Krail Dominion what it meant to make enemies of Deathworlders. 5 hours until they proved that humanity's friendship was worth more than all the Council's protocols. 5 hours until they saved the Xyloth or died trying. He looked at his crew one more time. Amy at communications, her jaw set with determination. Danny at weapons, checking and rechecking every system. Katie in engineering, pushing the ship beyond its limits. Ryan in medical, preparing to save lives. They were ready. They were angry. And they were about to teach the galaxy a lesson that had been a long time coming. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Xyloth system. For a moment, everyone on every bridge simply stared at what they saw. Then the anger began. Xyloth Prime had been beautiful. Jake had visited it once 2 years ago. The planet had cities made of crystal that sang in the wind, gardens filled with glowing plants, oceans that sparkled with bioluminescent life. It had been paradise. Now those crystal cities were dark and broken. Orbital stations floated in pieces. Debris fields marked where defensive satellites had been destroyed. And surrounding the dying planet like vultures were the ships of the Krail Dominion. "Tactical scan complete," Danny said, his voice shaking with rage. 28 hostile vessels confirmed, 4 heavy carrier ships, 12 cruisers and support craft. The carriers are in low orbit. Thermal scans show thousands of life signs aboard. They are still loading captives. Jake felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. They were not too late. The Xyloth were still there, still alive, still waiting for someone to save them. Amy, open a channel to the Krail fleet. Let me talk to whoever is in charge. The screen flickered and showed a Krail commander. The species was large and reptilian, with scales like armor and eyes that held no mercy. This one wore decorations that marked him as a raid leader. Krail vessels. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the United Human Space Navy. You are ordered to release all captives immediately and withdraw from Xyloth space. You have 5 minutes to comply." The Krail commander laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Humans, the Council's newest pets. This is a legal harvesting operation under ancient salvage rights. We claim this world and all on it. Turn back or we will add your ships to our collection." Jake's voice went very quiet. "You have made your choice. You will regret it." He cut the channel and opened the fleet-wide frequency. "All ships, this is Morrison. They have refused to surrender. Execute Battle Plan Alpha. Target the carriers first. Show them what Deathworlders do to slavers." The human fleet surged forward, and the Krail discovered they had made a fatal mistake. The Krail knew warfare. They had raided hundreds of worlds. They had fought Council defense forces dozens of times. They expected careful maneuvering, measured exchanges of fire, tactical retreats and advances. That was how civilized species fought. Humans were not civilized. Not in the way the galaxy understood the word. The human ships did not slow down. They did not form defensive lines. They accelerated. The Valkyrie led the charge, pushing its engines to levels that would have torn apart any other species' vessels. Katie was screaming over the intercom about stress limits and critical temperatures, but her hands never stopped working to give Jake every ounce of power. "All weapons free," Jake ordered. "Danny, target the nearest carrier. Drive section. I want them dead in space." The Valkyrie's railguns fired. These were not energy weapons that the Krail shields could deflect. These were chunks of tungsten accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Pure kinetic energy that shields could not stop. The slugs punched through the carrier's hull like it was made of paper. They tore through compartments, through systems, through the ship's massive drive core. The explosion was brilliant and terrible. The carrier broke in half, its cargo holds breached but intact. First carrier disabled. Danny reported with savage satisfaction. The captives are safe in the forward sections. Moving to Target 2. Across the battlefield, the other human ships were executing the same brutal efficiency. The UHSN Thunderchild, Admiral Stone's flagship, carved through a Krail cruiser with plasma beams hot enough to melt armor. The merchant ship Frontier's Edge used its mining lasers to cut another cruiser completely in half. The Krail fought back. Their weapons were powerful. Their ships were well armored, but they could not understand what they were facing. Human ships were built to withstand the hell of Earth orbit. Radiation that would cook other species. Micrometeorites traveling at orbital speeds. The crushing forces of launch and re-entry. Human armor was not designed just to stop weapons. It was designed to survive a hostile universe. A Krail cruiser fired its main battery at the Valkyrie. The beams splashed across the human ship's shields, draining them quickly. But when the shields failed, the beams hit armor that had been designed to survive re-entry. The hull glowed red-hot. Alarms screamed, but the armor held. "Return fire," Jake ordered calmly. The Valkyrie's railguns spoke again. The Krail cruiser exploded. "Second carrier is attempting to flee," Danny called out. "They are breaking orbit." "Not a chance," Jake growled. "All ships converge on that carrier. I do not care if we have to chase them to the edge of the galaxy. They do not leave with those people." 6 human warships changed course as one. They accelerated beyond what should have been possible. Their crews enduring forces that would have killed softer species. The carrier was fast, but human ships were faster. Human ships were built by a species that had learned to move at orbital velocities, that had sent vessels to other planets, that had touched the stars before they even met another species. The carrier's engines died under focused fire. The massive ship went silent, drifting in space. Inside, thousands of Xyloth waited for rescue. The third carrier tried to use the planet as a shield. It dove into Xyloth Prime's atmosphere, thinking the human ships would not follow. Another fatal mistake. Human ships were designed to survive re-entry. The Valkyrie's hull screamed as it plunged through thin air. Metal glowed red, then white. Alarms wailed, but Katie kept the ship steady. "We have them," Danny said. Firing. The railgun slugs tore through the carrier's engines. The ship began to fall. But human rescue shuttles were already launching. They used tractor beams to slow the carrier's descent. They guided it toward an empty plane, bringing it down hard but intact. "Fourth carrier neutralized," Amy reported. "All Krail carriers are down. Remaining enemy vessels are requesting surrender terms." Jake's voice was cold as ice. "Tell them to stand down completely. Power down all weapons. Release all captives immediately. Any ship that tries to run will be destroyed. Any ship that harms a captive will be destroyed. And someone send a message to the Krail Dominion. Tell them that if they ever enter Council space again, humanity will hunt them to extinction." The remaining Krail ships powered down. The battle was over. It had lasted less than an hour. The Krail fleet, which had terrorized the border worlds for generations, lay broken and defeated. Not a single human ship had been lost. A few were damaged, but they were all still flying. Jake looked at his crew. They were exhausted, covered in sweat, hands shaking from adrenaline, but they were smiling. They had done it. They had saved the Xyloth. "All ships begin rescue operations," Jake ordered. "Get those people off the Krail vessels. Medical teams to the carriers. Search teams to the planet. I want every single Xyloth found and brought to safety." The human fleet moved with practiced efficiency. Shuttles launched. Medical teams deployed. Within minutes, the first Xyloth were being brought aboard human ships. Ryan Hughes was waiting in the medical bay, his team ready. Jake watched through the viewport as the rescue operation unfolded. This was why humanity had come to the stars. Not for glory, not for conquest, but for moments like this. To stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. To be strong enough to protect the weak. The Galactic Council had protocols and procedures. But humanity had something more important. Humanity had heart. And sometimes that made all the difference. The Valkyrie's hangar bay had been transformed into an emergency medical center. Dr. Ryan Hughes moved between the injured Xyloth, his team working frantically. The crystalline beings had been badly hurt. Their bodies, which normally sang with harmonic frequencies, were cracked and broken. Their song was discordant and painful to hear. Commander Jake Morrison walked slowly through the bay. Each Xyloth he passed tried to thank him. Their voices were damaged, but the gratitude was clear. Some reached out with crystalline appendages to touch his hand. Others simply looked at him with eyes that held tears. Jake felt sick. They had won the battle. They had defeated the Krail. But looking at these broken people, he did not feel like a victor. He felt like someone who had arrived too late. Ryan saw him and walked over, wiping exhaustion from his face. "Commander, we need to talk." They moved to a quiet corner. Jake braced himself. "How many did we save?" Ryan's face was haggard. 32,000. We pulled 32,000 Xyloth from those carriers and from the planet's surface. They are hurt, traumatized, but alive. But Jake, the Krail kept records. They had been here for 3 full days before we arrived. They had already shipped out 50,000 before we got here. The number hit Jake like a physical blow. 50,000. 50,000 Xyloth scattered across the galaxy in slave markets, families torn apart, children alone and afraid. And he had been 8 hours too late to stop it. "We will find them," Jake said quietly. "Every single one. I do not care how long it takes. We will bring them home." A chime from his communicator interrupted them. Amy's voice came through. "Commander, you need to come to the bridge immediately. Multiple transmissions from the Galactic Council. They sound very angry." Jake made his way to the bridge. He was not surprised. They had disobeyed direct orders. They had engaged in unauthorized military action. They had told the Council in effect to go to hell. There would be consequences. The view screen showed not 1, but 12 Council members. Some looked outraged. Some looked thoughtful. 1 or 2 looked like they might be trying not to smile. Councillor Threndall spoke first, his 6 eyes all focused on Jake. "Commander Morrison, Admiral Stone, you have committed an unprecedented violation of Council military protocol. You engaged in offensive action without authorization. You defied direct orders from this Council. You have created a diplomatic crisis of the highest order." Admiral Stone's face appeared in a split screen. She looked completely unapologetic. "We saved 32,000 lives, Counselor. If that is a violation of your protocol, then your protocol is worthless." Another counselor leaned forward. This was Colvin, a Phyraxian. His species were known for their logical thinking. "The Admiral speaks truth. While the humans violated procedure, their actions achieved in 1 hour what Council forces have failed to accomplish in 200 years. They completely neutralized a major Krail raiding fleet." Threndall's feathers ruffled. "The Krail Dominion is demanding reparations. They claim the humans destroyed their vessels without provocation. They want compensation, and they want the human commanders arrested and tried for war crimes." Jake could not help the bitter laugh that escaped. War crimes? They were loading kidnapped civilians onto slave ships. What more provocation could possibly be needed? A new voice joined the conversation. High Harmonist Velthor appeared on screen. His crystalline form was still cracked, still healing, but his voice was clear and strong. "Counselors, if I may speak. The humans came when we called for help. They risked everything, their political standing, their economic relationships, their membership in this council. They asked for nothing in return. They expected no reward or recognition. They came because it was the right thing to do." Velthor's voice grew stronger. "For 3,000 years, this council has debated how to handle the Krail. For 3,000 years, we have formed committees and written protocols and held discussions while border worlds burned. In 1 hour, the humans did what we could not. They saved us. If you punish them for this, you punish mercy itself. You tell the galaxy that following proper procedure is more important than saving lives." The council chamber fell silent. Several counselors looked uncomfortable. Others nodded slowly. Colvin spoke again. "The Phyraxian delegation proposes a resolution. The human actions, while technically in violation of military protocol, were justified by extraordinary circumstances. We recommend that rather than sanctions, human military doctrine should be studied. Where appropriate, it should be adopted into council defensive strategy." More counselors began to voice agreement. Jake watched in disbelief. They were actually considering this. The same council that had been ready to expel humanity was now talking about learning from them. Threndall held up a hand for silence. "There is another matter. We have intercepted Krail communications. Word of this defeat has spread rapidly through their empire. Several other Krail raiding fleets have withdrawn from Council space entirely. They fear the humans. They fear what you call the Deathworlders. Admiral Stone smiled grimly. Good. Let them fear us. Let every slaver and pirate in the galaxy know that if they attack Council worlds, the Deathworlders will find them. And when we find them, we will show them no mercy. Jake watched the debate continue. They were talking about procedures and protocols again, but something had changed. The Council was beginning to understand that sometimes action spoke louder than words. Sometimes you had to be willing to fight for what was right. The transmission finally ended. Jake turned to his crew. What now, Commander? Amy asked quietly. Jake looked out at the stars. Now we keep our promise. 50,000 Xyloth are out there somewhere. We find them. All of them. We hunt down every slaver that profited from this. We make sure the galaxy knows that humanity protects its friends. Danny looked up from his console. Commander, we are receiving requests from other species. 17 different civilizations that have been Krail targets in the past. They want to know if humanity would consider extending protection agreements. Jake thought about that. 17 species asking humans for protection. Asking Deathworlders to stand between them and danger. It was a huge responsibility. It would mean more ships, more resources, more risk, but it was also exactly what humanity had come to the stars to do. Tell them yes, Jake said firmly. Tell them all yes. We are Deathworlders. We come from a world that taught us to be strong. We use that strength to protect others. That is what we do. He looked at his crew again. They were tired. They were battered. But they were smiling. They understood. This was bigger than one battle. This was the beginning of something new. A galaxy where the strong protected the weak. Where friendship meant something real. Where calling for help meant someone would come. Outside, rescue operations continued. Human teams worked alongside Xyloth survivors to repair what could be repaired, to heal what could be healed. It would take time. The wounds ran deep, but for the first time in 3 days, the Xyloth had hope. And in the dark places of the galaxy, where pirates and slavers had operated with impunity for thousands of years, a new fear was spreading. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they would not be stopped by distance, or difficulty, or danger. They would come when called, they would fight when needed, and they would never, ever abandon their friends. 3 months after the Battle of Xyloth Prime, Commander Jake Morrison found himself standing on the bridge of the Valkyrie once again. But this time everything was different. Flanking his ship were vessels from 19 different species. All of them were part of what the galaxy had started calling the Protection Fleet. True to their word, humanity had not stopped after saving Xyloth Prime. They had launched systematic operations against every known slave market in the galaxy. Every Krail outpost, every shadow port where stolen beings were bought and sold. The missions had been dangerous and exhausting, but the results spoke for themselves. 41,000 of the missing Xyloth had been recovered. Jake stared at that number on his console. 41,000 out of 50,000. They had found most of them, scattered across 100 different locations. Some had been in holding facilities, some were already sold but not yet delivered. A few had been held by private collectors. All of them were now free, but 9,000 were still missing. 9,000 Xyloth whose trail had gone cold. Jake knew those numbers would haunt him for the rest of his life. Along the way, they had found something else. Tens of thousands of other species citizens who had been taken over the years. Gentle beings from peaceful worlds who had been stolen and sold. The human fleet had freed them all. Now, rescue and rehabilitation centers operated on a dozen different worlds, helping former captives recover and return home. The Krail Dominion itself had collapsed. Their fleets were destroyed. Their bases were captured. Their leaders were facing justice in council courts. The terror they had spread for generations was finally ended, and everywhere in the galaxy people knew why. The Deathworlders had come. Humanity had refused to tolerate slavery in any form. Lieutenant Amy Carter interrupted his thoughts. Commander, we are receiving a transmission from Council Station. The memorial dedication is starting. Jake nodded and the view screen changed. It showed the massive space station that served as the Galactic Council headquarters. A new structure had been built next to the main chambers, a monument made of crystalline metal that caught starlight and transformed it into rainbows. High Harmonist Velthor stood before the gathered delegates. His crystalline body was completely healed now, his voice clear and beautiful. Today we dedicate this memorial to a truth that the Council forgot. That compassion without action means nothing. That justice delayed is justice denied. That sometimes doing the right thing means doing the hard thing. Lights illuminated the monument. Jake could see that it was covered in writing. Every known language in the galaxy was represented. Inscribed on the surface were the names of every being who had been rescued from slavery over the past 3 months. Thousands and thousands of names. At the top, in letters that glowed, was a single phrase. They answered the call. Velthor continued. The humans taught us many things. They taught us that strength without mercy is tyranny. But they also taught us that mercy without strength is just a wish. They showed us that true civilization is not measured by how well we treat friends in peaceful times, but by how fiercely we defend them in times of crisis. Councillor Colvin stepped forward. The Council has voted unanimously to adopt what we now call the Xyloth Protocols. Any distress call from a Council world will be met with immediate military response. No more committees. No more delays. We have also established the Joint Defense Initiative, combining Council resources with human tactical knowledge. Admiral Patricia Stone appeared on another screen. Humanity did not come to the stars to conquer. We came to explore, to learn, to make friends, but we also came prepared to defend those friends with everything we have. That has not changed. That will never change. Jake felt a hand on his shoulder. Danny Price stood beside him, smiling. We actually changed things, Commander. The galaxy is different now because of what we did. Jake looked at the mixed fleet surrounding the Valkyrie. Human ships flew alongside vessels from species they had saved. Former victims now stood ready to help others. Not just because of us, Jake said quietly. Because of all of us, together. Katie Wells called from engineering. Commander, new distress signal. It is from the Pelleran system on the outer rim. They are reporting raiders. Unknown configuration, but they match Krail tactics. Jake straightened immediately. The Pelleran were a peaceful species. Artists and philosophers. They had no defenses. How many ships do we have in range? 34 ships, Commander. Mixed fleet. Human vessels and our allied species. Jake looked at his crew. He saw the same determination that had driven them to Xyloth Prime. The same refusal to let innocents suffer. The same understanding that some things were worth fighting for. Then we answer the call, Jake said firmly. All ships prepare for immediate departure. Maximum speed to Pelleran space. Show them what the protection fleet does. The fleet moved as one. 34 ships from across the galaxy, united by a simple purpose. To protect, to defend, to ensure that no one ever had to face slavery or violence alone. As the Valkyrie's engines powered up, Jake allowed himself a moment to reflect. Humanity had come to the stars as explorers, as scientists and dreamers seeking knowledge and friendship, but Earth had forged them in fire. Their beautiful, terrible homeworld had made them strong enough to survive in a universe that did not care about fairness. Now they used that strength not for conquest, but for protection. They were Deathworlders, yes, but they were also guardians. They stood between the innocent and those who would harm them, and they would continue to stand there no matter the cost. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Friendship with humans meant something real. It meant that when you called for help, someone would come. It meant that when you were in danger, you would not face it alone. It meant that the strong would protect the weak, not exploit them. And the predators of the galaxy, those who lived by taking from others, had learned a different lesson. They had learned to fear, not because humans were cruel, but because humans were relentless. Attack a council world and the Deathworlders would find you, harm their friends, and they would hunt you across the stars. There would be no place to hide. No distance too far, no obstacle too great. The Valkyrie jumped to hyperspace, leading the protection fleet toward another world in need. Behind them, the memorial on Council Station gleamed in starlight, a permanent reminder of the day the galaxy changed, the day they learned what it meant to be friends with Deathworlders. It meant never being alone, never being forgotten. It meant that somewhere in the darkness, someone was listening. Someone cared. Someone would come. Amy looked up from her console. ETA to Pelleran system is 4 hours. All ships confirm ready status, Jake nodded. 4 hours. 4 hours to reach people who were probably terrified right now. 4 hours to show raiders that their days of easy prey were over. 4 hours to prove once again that humanity kept its promises. He looked at his crew.
Amy, monitoring communications and coordinating with the fleet.
Danny, checking weapon systems and tactical data. Katie, nursing every last bit of speed from the engines. Ryan, preparing medical bay for whatever they might find. They were tired. They had been running missions for 3 straight months, but they would not stop. Could not stop. Not while there were still people who needed help. Not while there were still innocents in danger, because that was what Deathworlders did. They protected. They defended. They stood in the gap between civilization and chaos, and they would continue to do so for as long as they were needed, which Jake suspected would be a very long time. The stars blurred past as the fleet raced toward the Pelleran system. Somewhere ahead people were afraid, but their fear would not last long, because help was coming. The protection fleet was on the way, and when they arrived, the raiders would learn the same lesson the Krail had learned. You do not touch humanity's friends, not ever. Not while there was still breath in human lungs and strength in human hearts. 6 months had passed since Xyloth Prime. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Council Station, looking out at the assembled fleet. It was the largest gathering of vessels the galaxy had ever seen. Not for war, but for something else entirely. For hope. The protection fleet had grown beyond anything Jake had imagined. 73 ships now, representing 42 different species. Former victims had become defenders. Peaceful civilizations had learned that sometimes you had to be willing to fight for peace. And at the center of it all was humanity, teaching others what they had learned on their harsh homeworld. The numbers told the story. In 6 months, the protection fleet had responded to 114 distress calls. They had stopped 23 raiding operations. They had freed over 90,000 beings from various forms of captivity. And most importantly, they had sent a message that echoed across every corner of the galaxy. The age of easy victims was over. High Harmonist Velthor approached Jake, moving with the fluid grace of his crystalline species. His body sang with harmonic frequencies, a sign of complete health. Commander Morrison, I wanted to speak with you before the ceremony begins. Jake turned and smiled. Velthor, you look well. I am healed, Velthor agreed, as is my world. The cities sing again. Children play in the gardens. Life returns to normal. This is because of you, because humans heard our cry and came without hesitation. Jake shook his head. We came because it was right, because you are our friends. On Earth we have a saying, you do not abandon family. Velthor's crystalline eyes seemed to shimmer. Family. Yes, that is what this has become, is it not? Before the council was an organization, a political body. But now, because of what you did, we are becoming something more. We are becoming a family that protects its own. They stood together, watching the assembled fleet. Jake could see the Valkyrie out there, surrounded by ships from across the galaxy. The UHSN Thunderchild, Admiral Stone's flagship, the Frontier's Edge, still captained by 70-year-old Sam Roberts. Xyloth vessels flying alongside Phyraxian cruisers. Pelleran defense ships next to human warships, all of them united by a common purpose. Commander Morrison, please report to the council chambers. Amy's voice came through his communicator. The ceremony is about to begin. Jake and Velthor made their way to the main chamber. It was filled with representatives from every council species. The room buzzed with conversation in 100 different languages. But as Jake entered, the noise died down. Every eye turned to watch the human commander. Councillor Colvin stood at the central podium. We are gathered here today to formally establish the Galactic Protection Initiative. This organization will coordinate defense efforts across all council space. It will respond immediately to threats. It will ensure that no world ever faces invasion or slavery alone. Colvin looked directly at Jake. 6 months ago, humanity showed us that the old ways were not working. They showed us that compassion requires action, that peace requires strength, that sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do. Today, we acknowledge that truth and commit ourselves to a new path. Admiral Stone appeared on screen from the Thunderchild. The humans are honored to be part of this initiative. But we want to be clear about something. This is not about Earth dominating the Council. This is about all of us learning to stand together. Every species has something to offer. Every culture has wisdom to share. Together, we are stronger than any of us could be alone. Threndal, who had opposed the human intervention at first, now spoke with genuine respect. 6 months ago, I believed the humans were reckless. I believed they would bring chaos to the council. I was wrong. They brought clarity. They reminded us what we are supposed to stand for. Protection of the innocent. Defense of the weak. Justice for the oppressed. The chamber erupted in harmonious sounds of agreement. Different species had different ways of showing approval, but the message was universal. The council had changed. They had learned, and they would not forget. After the ceremony, Jake found himself surrounded by representatives from various species. They all wanted to thank him, to shake his hand or touch his shoulder or offer their species' equivalent of gratitude. It was overwhelming and humbling at the same time. A young Peloran approached him nervously. Her people had been the ones the fleet had rushed to save just a few months ago. Commander Morrison, I wanted to thank you. My family was on the surface when the raiders came. We thought we would die, but you came. You saved us. You saved everyone. Jake knelt down to her level. We came because your people called for help. That is what friends do. They answer the call. The young Peloran smiled. I am training to be a pilot now. I want to join the protection fleet. I want to help others the way you helped us. Jake felt something warm in his chest. This was why they did it. Not for glory or recognition, but for moments like this. To inspire others. To show that violence did not have to win. That good people working together could make a difference. Later, back on the Valkyrie, Jake gathered his crew. Amy, Danny, Katie, Ryan. The people who had been with him from the beginning. The people who had risked everything to save strangers. We have new orders, Jake said. The council wants us to establish training programs. To teach other species our tactics and strategies. To help them build their own defensive capabilities. Katie grinned. So we go from fighting to teaching? That is different. It is important, Jake said. We cannot be everywhere at once. But if we teach others to defend themselves, to stand up to bullies and raiders, then we multiply our impact. We create a galaxy where strength is used to protect, not to exploit. Danny nodded slowly. The old saying, give someone a fish and they eat for a day. Teach them to fish and they eat for life. We are teaching the galaxy to defend itself, Ryan spoke up. But we will still respond to distress calls, right? We will still go when people need help? Jake smiled, always. That will never change. When someone calls for help, we answer. That is what we do. That is what humans do. He walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the 9,000 missing Xyloth were still lost. Somewhere out there, new threats were forming. Somewhere out there, people who had never heard of Earth or humanity were living in fear. But they were not alone. Not anymore. The protection fleet was growing. The galaxy was learning, and humanity, the species from the Death World, was teaching others that strength and compassion were not opposites. They were partners. Two sides of the same coin. Amy checked her console. Commander, we have a message from a survey team. They have located a Krail holding facility on the edge of unexplored space. They think some of the missing Xyloth might be there. Jake turned from the viewport, his expression hardening. Plot a course. Maximum speed. Contact the fleet. Tell them we have a mission. His crew moved with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, the Valkyrie was underway. Other ships from the protection fleet fell into formation. Human vessels. Xyloth ships. Phyraxian cruisers. Peloran scouts. All of them moving together toward people who needed help. As the stars blurred past, Jake thought about how much had changed. 6 months ago, humanity had been newcomers to the galactic community. Outsiders trying to find their place. Now they were leaders, teachers, and most importantly, friends to species across the galaxy. They had shown the galaxy that being strong did not mean being cruel, that having power meant having responsibility, that the measure of civilization was not how advanced your technology was, but how you treated those who could not defend themselves. Earth had given humanity many gifts: intelligence, curiosity, the ability to dream of touching the stars. But perhaps the greatest gift was the understanding that survival meant cooperation, that you protected your tribe, that when someone fell, you helped them up. That strength was measured not by who you could defeat, but by who you could save. The Deathworlders had brought that lesson to the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. Wherever there was injustice, they would fight it. Wherever there was oppression, they would end it. Wherever someone cried for help, they would answer, in wrath when necessary, in mercy when possible, but always, always they would come.